All right, welcome back to Trail and Ultra Running Training. My name is Will Frantz. I'm a running coach and a strength coach, and the whole goal of this podcast is to help provide a little more good, free information on training for trail and ultras and just running and life in general. So if you appreciate that and you like the information here, I'd love it if you would share with someone or like or subscribe or whatever is relevant on the platform that you're watching it. You know, the things that tell the robots that these things matter. So, with all that said, let's get to the topic of today, and I want to discuss competition. Now, I was having a conversation with an athlete last night, and this comes up fairly regularly, actually. And we're just talking about competition and being competitive and how we might view this, right? This is not a one-off. This is a fairly, I don't know, every couple weeks kind of thing, depending on where we are in the year, because it comes up more during race season, unsurprisingly. And I think for a lot of us, the idea of competition and competitiveness and all these things can hold a slightly strange place in our running, I guess, because for for one, like I doubt anybody listening to this is a professional runner, right? So when you're being competitive, then who are we being competitive with? It is rare for someone to podium, right? Like that's kind of the point. But also it is rare for any of us who tend to get our running advice from podcasts, from to be honest. To have a chance to really podium many races. So who are you being competitive with? And the answer is invariably going to be some version of myself. But it is probably not the only person with whom you're being competitive. Like if you see Becky down the street and you just kind of want to beat her at the next race because she's always in the running group and you're like kind of neck and neck, or Chad's on Strava and you think like, hey, I'm gonna get that guy. I'm gonna like get the I don't know. I'm not on Strava, king of the whatever, some version of a crown. And if so, that's super normal, right? Like it can actually be incredibly healthy to have that level of competition with people in your area. It just kind of depends on what you get out of it and what you're looking for. And it can provide some drive and some push to your running. And it is also really easy for it to get out of hand. Like I know people who suck all of the joy out of their running because they have to follow these like silly competitive metrics that nobody, including them, cares about. If they're being honest, like it doesn't even matter to the person who like gets really OCD about it, but they just can't stop. And while a little competitiveness or like certain varieties of competition can be healthy, it really just depends how it affects your overall life as a whole. If you have a running buddy who's similar to you and with whom you can have some of this like healthy mental competition, it might improve both of your running. It might push you to go a little farther on a workout or whatever. And as long as it doesn't negatively affect how you view them as a person or how you treat them as a friend, then that is fantastic. You just got like free motivation, right? Which is one of the things that so many people come to me asking for. And it's one of the things that a coach really can't provide. Motivation is, there are many sources of external motivation. Um, and I'm not gonna say that they're not important, right? They think they did a study on Olympic and really highly competitive athletes many years ago, and some of the best athletes on the planet are more driven by external motivation than internal. Like they want to get the gold. They're driven by money because it is their job. For some people, depending where they come from in the world, it can be a lot more money than they'd have any chance at making otherwise, right? So, like external motivation or motivation, it can be very um, important, but it is often not a little bit of motivation from in order to like help you move up from place 250 to 248 in your running is probably not going to be that drive there, right? So having a source of motivation that hits a little closer to home and is there on a daily basis can be really helpful. Now, I have a couple warnings here. Like one, some of us, a lot of us, might have been more competitive athletes when we were younger. And if that's the case, then this might get in the like harmfully competitive side. Like I've definitely been driven by some of those feelings of competition that just negatively affected my psyche and overall life. Drove me to sleep a lot less, drove me to like push against friends in ways that were not necessarily helpful. And the biggest thing is it just like sucks the joy out of your day to day and the activity and these things that you said you love, right? Like that's how you end up burnt out. And if you've been there, you know that it can be a tough line. And it's very reasonable to like let that pendulum swing a little far in the other direction and avoid competition as a whole. Because when we get so competitive that it completely destroys this thing that we once loved, we might just like overall leave or entirely avoid competition for a while. But competition can be incredibly healthy and it can be motivating and it can be fun. And we just have to not let those like type A obsessive-ish tendencies consume us. We can't let them consume us. Now, another part of this is going to be setting realistic expectations. I think it is really easy to let ourselves get competitive with people who we'd have no chance at beating anyway. And this is really even easier on the internet because you have exposure to a wide range of people who um, you may never have seen their training or performance or whatever, right? So you see how the like highlight constant highlight reel of social media of people doing well and setting new PRs and crushing things and then like never talking about the races that they didn't where they didn't do well or they DNF'd or when they do DNF, it's this like 12-page long report about why the DNF happened or whatever. Um, you don't need to get hyper competitive with everyone. And we have to set some realistic expectations. Like I'll use myself as an example because it's easier, but one of the few people I run with on a regular basis is much more built for endurance than me. And she's also trained that way for a very long time. She will always be faster than me at any appreciable distance if she wants to be. And for that not to be true, it would take 20 years and a lot of like really different life choices on both sides. I would have had to have pursued very different sports in the past, as would she. Like from the get-go, we were set for very different trajectories of athleticism, and then we both leaned into our strengths. And at this point, there's a pretty significant disparity. Now, if we keep running together, I'm probably always going to suck a little more wind than she does on our runs, and that's okay because it's fun to run with this person. But it is unrealistic for me to deny like genetics and decades of training history. So if I got really competitive with her, it wouldn't do anybody any good. It would just like ruin a fun running relationship. And this is an easy example because of her background, but it'd also be really true if someone just had an innate talent for running. I've coached someone who found running in his early 30s and a little over a year later got like sub 3:30 at his first marathon on a course with a couple thousand feet of gain. Some people are just good at certain sports. And just because they didn't find that sport as a kid and doesn't have the like background doesn't make them any less genetically gifted at that sport. And you have to be aware of when you're working with someone there or when you run into that, because it can be really easy for your brain to be like, this person just found this sport and I've been working at it for years and it doesn't feel fair. It doesn't matter. Like you're probably good at something else. So don't let your brain like completely take you down a weird spiral. Because again, none of us are professional runners. If you were, all of us would be genetically gifted because that's how that happens. But we have to not let the competition take over and ruin the sport. It can't ruin the activity because running is probably a really healthy thing in all of our lives. Because if not, you probably wouldn't be listening to me ramble on for however many minutes about competition in this sport. And if we have someone who helps push our competitive buttons, then we should ask ourselves, is it reasonable? And does it come from a good place? And if both of those are yes, then like let's fucking go. Use that as fuel to push harder and push more in your next workout. Eat a little better, lift a little heavier, sleep a little more. And if it's unreasonable or coming from a place of jealousy, then take a step back. Check yourself. Maybe like chat with a therapist. All of these things would be really reasonable ways to like take a pause or that competition is good for performance. Good athletes want to win, and they want to win big. And win might mean different things for different people depending where you are in your sport, but that drive will help you perform better. And even if you have no chance of like podiuming or a race, we can still win big in whatever way that might be meaningful for you. Just don't let it consume you, and it'll help you improve your progress. Only short one for today. I'm going to come back later this week with another part in the strength training series. We're going to talk about pull. I really appreciate you sticking around. I had to take a week off last week for both mental health and just life structure things. I was house sitting and I wasn't near and set up. And rather than leave a podcast episode that sounded just indecipherable, I figured I'd just give it a week because it doesn't matter. So I hope you all are doing really well and you have a great rest of your day. And we'll be back soon with another one. Go have some fun on the trails.